Good morning. Let me begin this press conference by apologizing to the people of Bermuda for the rapid deterioration in the collection of garbage over the past few days. To say we are facing a number of challenges would be an understatement. You will be aware from my ministerial statement in Parliament on October 20th last year that there has been an ever-increasing challenge with both personnel and vehicles in the waste management section. To remind and excerpt from that statement, and I quote, "Mr. Speaker, garbage collection continues to be a challenge with both shortages of equipment and personnel. Regularly, we have as few as 8 trucks serviceable out of a fleet of 19, with maintenance and a shortage of parts being major factors. A study progressing on reviewing zones, a possible transfer station, the number and type of trucks, and of course the appropriate level of staffing. An initial wave of recruitment of 5 laborers is currently in train. The overtime budget has been exhausted, and we will look elsewhere within the ministry to supplement this in order to keep on top of collection schedules. Like many things, we have found, Mr. Speaker, the budget was arbitrarily reduced last cycle from the requested amount, and no consideration of the reality of the situation was planned for. Limited trucks and personnel both combined to create the need for ongoing overtime. Adding new staff, new trucks to the fleet, and enhanced operating procedures will eventually lead to a significant reduction in the amount of overtime. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the section is in need of a better management structure. There is a need for more environmental safety oversight, plus an operational manager to oversee the superintendents and allow the solid waste manager to focus on strategy rather than day-to-day operations. The option of amalgamating this section with Tynes Bay is also being explored to provide synergy and a more comprehensive structure. The first step is to action the recommendation of a staff appointment to begin this process. Of course, all these actions are geared towards improved efficiency and reduced costs," end quote. As an example, a section that should have 54 staff and 19 serviceable vehicles has 40 staff and 9 working vehicles on average. Clearly, this is not a situation that was created in the past 6 months, and some of the legacy issues are invited early retirement, freezing of posts, poor planning over the past few years, arbitrary reduction of budgets, and a moratorium on hiring new staff. That moratorium was lifted in August last year, and an initial complement of 5 additional waste management staff was approved in September. When I met with the waste management section on October 11th, I informed them at that time that help was on the way. Inexplicably, that request for additional staff was never executed. I'm sure you can imagine my frustration and anger at learning only recently that some 4 months later, that decision had not been acted upon. Rest assured, we are investigating to ascertain the reason for this inordinate delay, and the necessary corrective and/or disciplinary measures will be taken. Those 5 posts will be filled immediately from recent applicants, and that review has commenced this morning with a view to fast-tracking the actual hiring. Additionally, the number of injuries being incurred by staff has resulted in a number of long-term sick staff as well as recurring injuries of other staff. Vehicles are taken out of service for a variety of reasons that can easily be avoided if we took greater care of the items placed in household garbage, such as metal objects that, when subjected to the hydraulic equipment of trash trucks, can cause significant damage to them. Now, with that background, the main reason for the non-collection of waste over the last few days is due to an unusually high shortage of staff. Last Friday, we had 40% of staff unavailable due to vacation, short and long-term illness, and injuries. Additionally, a meeting was held with the BIU and staff on Friday last, which lasted most of the day, therefore no garbage was collected. To discuss various issues and challenges within the collection section, which included the availability of vehicles, repairs, sickness, staff shortages, and the proliferation of injuries. At the conclusion of that meeting, the staff agreed to work to rule, which means they return to the depot for lunch and are not working overtime. As a result of this action, significant delays and major disruption to scheduled collections this week has occurred. We are working through those issues with the union, and I have another meeting this afternoon with BIU President Furbert, and we are optimistic that the issues can be resolved by the end of this week. Clearly, there is a significant gap in the communication chain, both up and down internally, as well as efficiently communicating with the public. We have implemented new protocols to mitigate against this happening again. In the interim, I encourage residents to continue to secure their waste in lidded bins in compliance with the Waste and Litter Control Act 1987. We as a people, all of us, must do better. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the public to be more aware of what they put in their trash, and always remember that the collection is made by hard-working staff that deserve respect. So when garbage is placed in paper bags 2 days before collection, open bins, it rains, and the result is garbage strewn all over the neighborhoods, the workers are not picking it up. That's not their job. Some plastic bags are like body bags. They are too heavy. When a single worker lifts more than 5 tons in a day, that's 11,000 pounds, not 10 as printed, sorry. That's quite a good workout, I admit, but it is completely inconsiderate of those workers who have to lift them, and I suspect a major contributing factor to some of the injuries staff are experiencing. I wish I could invite members of the public to spend just 1 hour on a trash truck, as many of us in the ministry have. I guarantee you will never put your trash out the same way again, and you will always have a high appreciation for those workers who collect it. If we could just reduce our trash volume by 10%, we would save a lot of time, money, and aggravation. I invite the public to review 27 ways to reduce trash in your home via the website www.smallfootprintfamily.com, 37 ways to reduce trash. So where are we now? The bottom line is that things will not get better this week. So I encourage all of us to take some pride in our own neighborhoods and not simply be irate and complain, but to actually do something to help the situation. As an example, in my own neighborhood, not as a minister, but as a fellow resident, I have secured a trucker to collect all the garbage on my road and deliver it to Tynes Bay. And as the MP for constituency 27, I have done the same in Cedar Hill. The Minister of Finance, thankfully this morning, has approved the waiving of tipping fees at Tynes Bay for the next week for any trucker delivering household garbage. Additionally, those on their way to work can take advantage of the extended opening hours of the public drop-off. As a reminder, waste and recyclables can be dropped off at Tynes Bay, which is open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekends, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturdays, and 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Sundays. I expect to be able to provide a further update following my meeting this afternoon with the union leadership and public works staff, and shall keep the public informed of those developments. At the end of the day, we all have a role to play as the non-collection of garbage directly affects each of us. I prefer we focus on solutions rather than anything else. Thank you.
Colonel Burch, the statement that came out initially on the initial delays last week was carefully worded. It went through great pains not to mention this work to rule. Are you confident in light of your pending meetings that this will in fact be resolved and maybe back to normal? Next week?
Confident is a strong word.
Okay.
I am reasonably optimistic. I recognize that my word is in question at the moment, having told workers in October that we were going to hire five staff, and in January there's been no movement whatsoever. And so one would question what I said.
And why is that? Movement?
I don't know yet. I have no clue. We are trying to figure out what the problem has been over the last 4 months, and why, having made a decision in September, we are now on the threshold of the 1st of February, and no action has been taken.
Would that indicate someone's dropped the ball?
It would indicate that perhaps more than someone has dropped the ball.
When we spoke shortly after your appointment, you commented on the state of the fleet. Obviously, that hasn't changed. We're in a time of budget restraints. People tend to focus on the bus situation and don't think about trash until it's piled up. What's going on in terms of budget planning? I know you can't say what your budget is, but what can the workers expect with regards to new trucks? Because I recall you saying some of the smaller trucks that can fit in the tribe roads and so forth are out of service.
Yeah. The short answer to that is that we do actually have a solution. And having been to the quarry last week, Wednesday, I believe, which is where they repair garbage trucks, and seeing a number of them out of service and being explained to what the challenges face, which is one of the reasons why I said in my statement about what we put in our garbage. Oftentimes it is as a result of a piece of pipe, for instance, getting caught in the hydraulics. That truck has to go out of service. And so what we witnessed last week, Wednesday, is that the people at the quarry that are charged with repairing trucks actually do a stellar job. I mean, in one truck, I think it was safe to say there were about 6 metal plates that had been welded into the truck to fill holes that had been caused by, you know, people putting stuff in the garbage and saying, you know, it's going from my house, I don't have to really worry about it. And so I think that being able to understand better what the challenges they face, one of the issues with the repair of vehicles at the quarry is that there are a number of moving parts, not the least of which is that a number of them have to go to TCD to be passed, and so that means an additional amount of work that has to be done on those vehicles. So we have approved, as of last week Thursday, additional overtime for those workers to actually spend time working on the trucks, and this is a suggestion that came from them. And so the workers are quite prepared to do the work, and so there is a communication internally as well, in the sense that there is a slight disconnect between the people who do the repairs and the people who drive the trucks, not understanding what is going on. And we've taken steps to address that too by getting all the people in the room so everybody understands each other's role in this whole process. And so there will not be the sort of lack of communication that leads to frustration and a belief that nothing is being done to address the situation.
Colonel, this situation you find, was this all by design?
No, I don't think it was by design. I don't think it was by design in the same way as parks, in the sense that they were destined for privatization. I think it was by design in the sense that efforts were made to camouflage money that was being spent on America's Cup without having to go back to Parliament to ask for additional funding. And so you did that by not hiring staff. And so there was a moratorium on staff almost universally for 4 years. And so you were able to have funds that you could via legitimately elsewhere to cover costs that you hadn't budgeted for.
Good morning, Minister.
Morning.
From the speech you just read, it says the bottom line is that things will not get better this week. To the community residents who have seen trash piling up in the neighborhood for the last couple of days, when can they expect things to get better?
Well, I should have an answer for that by close of play today after my meeting this afternoon. If the work to rule is ended at the end of this week, they will see things improve. But I also think, I think that, you know, as not as the minister, but as somebody who lives in a neighborhood. These are our neighborhoods. So, you know, getting irate and emailing me that you got rats crawling over your trash because it hasn't been collected for a week. How about you? It's your trash. You know, it's your trash. And you know, we all of us collectively don't think about trash until we come home and it hasn't been collected. And then the workers are subjected to a significant amount of abuse because they claim that they're not doing their jobs. And then I get complaints that, why trash trucks on the road at 8 o'clock at night? Well, you can't have it both ways. We are facing a number of challenges, and we're working our way through them. I expect, because of the actions that we have taken in terms of addressing some of the misconceptions, not the least of which is that if I tell you in October, that we're hiring staff, and come January you have seen no movement, I wouldn't believe me either. And so with that knowledge and the fact that there is going to be additional staff that are going to be hired, because we're not advertising, we have people who have applied for those jobs, we are going through those applications now, and we will interview those people so that we're cutting down the process dramatically with a view to hiring people in the shortest amount of time. And so what you'll find is that even though we have a shortage of vehicles at the moment, we actually don't have enough staff. So the vehicles that are in service, not all of them are on the road.
Mm-hmm. So if the short-term solution then is resolving this work-to-rule situation, I'm wondering, long-term solution, you've touched on staffing levels needing to increase as well as physical resources in terms of trucks. By upping staffing levels and ensuring the health of the fleet, will this prevent this kind of problem from happening going forward?
The short answer is yes. We will be able to get more trucks back into service, and if we have staff to service them, then we'll be able to better address the garbage collection in a regular sort of way, so that those people whose trash is collected on Mondays actually gets collected on Monday, and they can move on to Tuesdays. In relation to vehicles, we have identified there's about 6 or 7, I think, different types, different makes of vehicles, some of which are no longer available from the supplier, some of which are no longer suitable for our roads and for the road that is required. And so what we have done recently is to put the people who actually drive the trucks and manage that aspect of it with the people who are at the quarry who actually go out and source the trucks, so that the vehicles that we actually purchase going forward are fit for purpose. And so there isn't a sort of, why you buy this truck that only has 2 seats in it when we have 3 crew.
You mentioned that there was plans to immediately fill those 5 posts, which would bring the total number of staff by my calculations to 45, which would still be 9 short of the 54. Are there plans for additional hires?
We will monitor that. Even though the posts are funded, we have said across the ministry, and I think across government, in lifting the moratorium, that we weren't going to go and fill all the posts. Part of the remit of my assignment in this ministry at this time is not to do things the way we've always done them. And so it's looking at whether there are other ways to do it that are going to save costs and have some economies of scale. As an example, not in this particular case in terms of waste management, but in terms of an area that is also a source of a significant amount of emails in my inbox, is the state of the roads generally in terms of vegetation. We are having discussions about how we can amalgamate that function within Parks and Works and Engineering, where you have the most ridiculous situation that ever exists on the planet, I think, where one group cuts hedges and then the other group must come behind and cut the grass that they walked on to cut the hedges, when if we combined the two, we could have some economies of scale in equipment and vehicles and personnel and productivity.
I have one question.
One more question?
One more question, sorry. And it might be for a personal opinion, but when we first talked shortly after your appointment, you said the new motto is business as usual, just will not do.
Yes.
From what I'm hearing, with no movement on hiring of staff, it would appear that some people within your ministry did not get that memo.
That's correct.
So what's going to happen with them?
Well, this ministry, like government, is like a super tanker. Okay? If you're heading east and you want to go west, you cannot push a button and immediately turn around to go west. You've got to maneuver. And so when you have a ministry that has 706 staff, it's going to take a while for that message to get down into the trenches. And I mean, when I meet with staff, we were out in St. David's yesterday morning, and staff were saying, we were getting the normal sort of standard line, and me trying to talk to them about things are going to be different, that's a waste of my time. In this situation, you have to show them, because talk is cheap. That's what they had for the last 5.5 years.
Right now, you're showing up as the guy who didn't come through.
That's correct.
So how does that feel?
Well, how do you think it feels?
I don't know, in your words.
Well, I can't use those words.
I have one more before Bernice. I just want to know, though, moving forward, what assurances can you give as minister that this slow motion, because you've worked in the private sector and you know that private sector doesn't operate.
Right.
There's a statement that what takes 5 days in the private sector takes 15 or 20 days in government. There's a perception that there are people in civil service who know they're going to get paid whether they do their job or not.
I think that's a general comment that I wouldn't necessarily say is shared by everybody in the civil service. It's a work in progress. And so what I can tell you, first of all, this would be something that is a source of significant irritation to me. And you can let that go wherever you wish. But having said that, that's not something that's going to defeat me. What that means is that the 1,269 people whose emails are sitting in my inbox right now, and it's probably going up exponentially by another 100 since I've been standing at this podium, are going to have to wait a little longer, because what it means is that I must spend more time doing what really is not my job. And by that I mean I must interact with staff more and encourage and lead by example about where it is that we're going. I cannot leave that to surrogates. And so what that means is that, that my responsibility, if I'm going to have personal satisfaction in terms of my assignment in this job, that is what's going to be required, because I'm not going to sit in my office and sulk that people didn't do, it took me 4 months. I'm going to figure out a way how to fix it. And I'm going to figure out a way how to encourage people that, doing whatever it is you did for 4 months, waiting for an answer from somewhere, really is not sufficient. And that if I need an answer from Tom and he's not answering me, then I need to bounce it up the food chain to get an answer in a shorter space of time than 4 months. And so it's conveying that sort of message that, that I will act if I know that, 4 months is unacceptable.
Bottom line, you got to fix your chain of command.
Well, I wouldn't even go so far as fixing the chain of command. I said, first of all, I personally believe that the civil service, to a great extent, have been abused in the last 4 years. The advice hasn't been taken in many cases. People have been fighting in terms of, there's been public criticism of civil servants, and there's been just general malaise. If you work in an environment where you normally have 5 or 6 people, and you see people leave and you're the only 2 people left, you get a clear message that nobody gives anything about your ability to do your job. And so you then naturally go to, okay, well, they don't care, neither do I. And so what we are facing is fighting a belief that we have come into this equation, and even though we're singing a different song, the same tune. And so we've got to convince people that, yeah, we're singing a different song, but we're also singing a different tune, and we intend walking the walk as opposed to just talking it.
Good morning, Minister. Is there any option of using private truckers in the short term?
That is something that I will discuss with the union this afternoon. Obviously, there are ramifications. One of the challenges with doing that is that you've got to get union buy-in, and so yes, I'll be having that conversation with them this afternoon, along with a number of other options, and making sure that they are fully aware of all of the actions that we've taken within the ministry to address some of the challenges that the workers perceive are not being addressed. And I think that if we're able to do that, and I believe that I can, because we have a good working relationship with the Bermuda Industrial Union, that we should be able to get to a point of resolution. And so as a result of this experience, having gone and had a meeting with them, you can rest assured that I now will monitor personally very closely how long it takes to hire the 5 staff, what progress we are making in terms of repairing vehicles, and which really is not my job, but it is my job if I want my word to be my bond, which is the most important thing to me. And so, yeah, I'll do that. And I think that we'll get to a point where the workers will be able to understand that, yeah, it's not going to be fixed overnight, but that we really are moving in the right direction.